Okay, we should be live with Master Harvey. I usually wait a little bit so that I can share this out and let some people hop on. So we'll just kind of holding pattern for a minute or two while we get everything going.
We can chat amongst ourselves.
Yes, ma'am. Just say hi to everybody, ma'am.
Hi, everybody. Happy June. That is the month we're in, right?
That is the month we're in.
Happy Monday.
Yes.
That's the day it is, too. Everybody.
I got to turn that
Happy
volume
June.
down.
Oh, I love hearing the echo of myself back.
All right, that volume's turned down. No more echo.
Eek.
There are a few people gradually joining us. Okay, so if you're out there and you want to comment to Master Harvey so she can check back later or ask questions as we go, that's fine. But we are here live with Master Julia Harvey of Imperial Dragon Tongue Sudo in Imperial, Pennsylvania. Master Harvey is also our training coordinator for Region 22 and a good longtime friend. So good to have you here, ma'am. Anything you want to say before I start asking you questions?
You make me sound so important. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I feel important.
All right.
Thanks for asking me to do this. It's a little nerve-wracking for me, so hopefully don't stutter too much, but I appreciate the opportunity to say hi to people and, I don't know, share whatever you would like me to share.
Yes, ma'am. All right, we're gonna start the same way I start all these interviews, and I'm gonna ask Master Harvey to share her personal story of when and how she got started in martial arts and in the World Tongue Sudo Association specifically.
Well, I met a guy, and that started the whole thing. I was finishing my education, my college career at Penn State. I was hanging out for an extra semester because I was dancing. I was working in a diner, and I met this guy who he's now called Master Homechek. But yeah, I was a dancer, and he did this karate stuff, and I started peeking in and look at the karate classes, and he would peek in and look at my dance classes. But he did not dance. That didn't work really well. Shh, don't tell him I said that. So after we got married and left state college, we moved back to my hometown in the Pittsburgh area. And I knew it was, his goal, his dream to have a studio. So he started teaching me a little bit in the yard. We did a self-defense class at Penn State's branch campus in Beaver, and a couple people showed up to that. And this one guy in particular was really interested. So we invited him out to the house. That crazy guy was Scott Dybel. And I said, he's never going to come back. I don't know what that kid's doing. And sure enough, he showed up at the house continually. And that started River Valley Tongue Sudo. And that was my leaving the dance world and entering the martial art world kind of thing. And as far as World Tongue Sudo, yeah, when you meet a guy, that wasn't really a choice. But as the years go by, there were choices to make along the way, and Master Homechek is World Tongue Sudo all the way, and that's where we've been.
Yes, ma'am. So let me talk a little bit about background. And you had mentioned that you were a dancer. So can you talk a little bit about that and maybe any ways it influences your perspectives or philosophy on martial arts?
Wow. So as a dancer, when you look at the martial arts, you see the pretty stuff. You see the beautiful forms, and you see the movement, and you see the coordination, and you see the body mechanics. And I guess you see the art part mostly. So yeah, as a dancer, when you look in, it's like, I can do that. That's not a problem. Teach me movement. That's not a problem. And then all of a sudden, I kept hearing Master Homechek say things like, okay, that was very pretty. Now, do you think you could make it work? Oh, and that was a whole different world, a whole different part of the martial art that I had to learn. Yeah, mimicking movement is easy, but it's just mimicking. and then understanding what that movement does, that's a whole different ball game. So I had to learn that part. Fighting and sparring, that was also, whoa, what do you mean? We're going to hit each other? No, that's not pretty. That doesn't look good. So that part was a little bit trickier to learn. But the philosophies of movement and body mechanics are still there.
Definitely.
I don't want to say the transition was easy. Pieces of the transition were easier than others. So.
At the same point, I think if there's anybody out there that may be the opposite and struggle with the aesthetic part, that someone who has that background may be able to help with that. Can you talk on that at all?
What do you mean? Somebody who's all
somebody's
fight,
all
fight.
Yes.
Yeah, fight. Go, knock you out. And I said, dude, do you think you could chill and breathe a little bit first? And maybe look at what your feet are doing. So yeah, somebody that comes in that's very yang and very hard and very, I just want to, and I don't think that's what Tang Soo Do is completely all about. That's why it's called a martial art. There's art parts, there are martial parts. They compact and flow together. But if you only have one side of that, you're just a street thug fighting. So.
Yes, ma'am.
That help?
That helps. Yes. Definitely check back. We have, on and off about 15 people watching us right now.
Oh, wow. Hi, people.
Not to make Master Harvey more nervous, but if you have questions, you go ahead and pop them up there. Going back to martial arts, you had mentioned Penn State. Although you weren't specifically a member of Penn State martial arts group, for those of us who have known Master Harvey, she was definitely at the very least an honorary member or an adjunct member. Can you talk a little bit about that lineage, and do you have any specific memories of Penn State, Appalachia, Master K, Master White?
I have a lot of great memories from those people in those times. So yeah, even though I got my degree at Penn State and I was there, I never really trained as a martial artist at Penn State Martial Art Group. All my college life was spent dancing. And like I said, I was kind of coming to the end of that when I met this guy and started peeking in. Penn State Martial Arts Group was always very welcoming, and I didn't know if it was because he was like high rank at that time, and they thought, oh, we better be nice to this lady that's now, who's this chick attached to our high rank. But it was always very welcoming, a very nice environment. And Master K, he set me up for something. He talked to me about being a dancer, and he talked to me about how dancers move and some of their philosophies. And then all of a sudden he sprung this question on me. He said, well, how about you come and teach a dance class to our martial artists and focus on how to jump? And I went, what? And I agreed to do it. And I spent a lot of time fussing over, how I was this tiny little dancer. What was I going to do to this room full of martial artists all standing all in their uniforms? And he advised me to just forget about all that. Just forget about that. Treat them like a room full of, beginner dancers and talk about how to jump. And I realized, later that he was setting me up to kind of draw me into the martial art world, as Master K was wonderful at setting people up to bring them into something. And that was a good time. I started the class and he wasn't there yet. He was like 15 minutes later, and I just thought, okay, he's going to walk in and just hang out in the back and watch. Well, no, he walked in and came and took his spot right in the high rank spot. Then that's when I started getting nervous. But it was fun. We talked about how dancers, you bend your knees and you bend your ankles before you take off, and you land toe ball heel, and you take off heel ball toe. And we talked about the shock absorbers, and I think that it's not necessarily all martial artists, but that young college group of martial artists really didn't pay attention to, how they jump. These young punk kids are like, I just jump and I just, the ground is going to be there and somehow magically I'm going to land. And the older you get, you realize that that landing is kind of important to land right and to take off well. So yeah, Master K kind of sucked me into that class, and that was good times. Master White also kind of helped take care of me initially. When we moved out to Pittsburgh and started River Valley Tongue Sudo Academy, we were the only studio out here. State College is about 3 hours away. And coming up through the ranks, we would go there for GUP testings. And when I was a Chodombo and wanting to train for black belt, I would go out and visit him once a month. Sometimes your instructor, being your spouse, can be a little precarious there. And so I got a little bit extra training with Master White, and that was always a good time too.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Some great stories. Appreciate that. So can you talk a little bit about, as you got obviously on further in rank, you became an instructor of Imperial Dragon Tongue Sudo. Can you talk a little bit about that process and kind of, how that happened, how you formed your own cool identity there, and what's become today? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I forget that two people can't talk at the same time, and technology doesn't work that way. Like I said, when we moved out to Pittsburgh, we were the only ones here. So by the time we were done teaching myself and Scott Dybel out of our house in the garage and in the basement, and we had a couple other people that came to a park and met us, and then we started looking for a physical location. And then this guy, John Casuccio, kind of flowed in, and he was a great guy. He was a great help in, anytime something needed done, he was like, oh, I can help you paint that wall or hang that thing, or, all these kind of things. But because Master Homcheck and I were the only ones here, even though I was a green belt, brown belt, I was involved in teaching a lot because I was the only other person. And John Casuccio was a great guy. And when I wanted to start a little dragon program, and I started talking about kids, he had kids at that time. And he was like, I'm going to bring my son and his 4 friends over. And my first little dragon classes were kind of fueled by him. And I had scheduled this, just 5 sessions, this 1 month of this little dragon program. And at the end of that program, the people he was bringing, the boys and his son, they wanted to continue. And he kind of took that as an opportunity to start his studio, Imperial Dragon Tongue Sudo, which is about 25 minutes away from River Valley. And so he ran the studio for, I'm not sure if it was 4 or 5 years, a couple years. I went over and did his little dragon program in the day with his wife when he was ready to start his own program. And then I was a Samdan, and at that time, to be a master, you needed to have your own studio. And I was really in the process of starting to look at towns and looking where we could start another studio so that I could have a studio under my belt. And John Casuccio said, hey, I got this opportunity to move. Said, but I won't move if somebody's not going to take over my studio. And so that's how that came about. I actually took over his studio. Thank you very much. And and so he helped get that kicked off.
Yes, ma'am. So you talked a little bit about Little Dragons programs. Master Harvey was one of the early adopters of that program compared to many of us, and is very well known in the Masters community, particularly as having, yes, ma'am, great Little Dragons. You spoke at Masters Clinic about it, went over really well. So you can talk a little bit about how you approach Little Dragons and the importance of martial arts at that age.
Well, by the time we were ready to do that, we had a child of our own who was being raised in the studio, as a lot of children of couples are, and she was ready to train. She was only 3, and we decided that 4 was a good age. We started taking 4-year-olds. She was the only exception to that, and this little program began. I had been watching her at a dance class, and that dance class was an hour long. It was tap ballet and, little kid movement. And as I watched that dance class, the last 10 minutes of that hour class were useless. It was useless. The kids were done. So I thought, okay, an hour is too long. I'm going to have, this 45-minute class. That's going to be perfect time. And the program evolved. I started off with, we're going to do our warm-ups and we're going to bow in like we do. And it took me a couple months to realize there's no reason to bow in 4-year-olds. They have no idea what you're talking about anyway. And so the program really, really evolved. I love it. It's my favorite thing. It's a really active class. It's probably one of my best workouts when I'm running around with the little dragons. And I still think that I run a very different program than a lot of people do. I only do once a week, 45 minutes. It's structured. They're not allowed to run around. It's not free time. It's not free for all time. I think that's actually dangerous at that age to let kids run around a room unsupervised. It certainly is not productive. And I think at that age, they're just starting to learn movement, fine motor skills and gross motor skills, as well as their cognitive learning. It's completely different at that age. If you get them before kindergarten, a lot of them have no idea what a class structure should be, that they're not allowed to, run off anytime they feel like it. Zoom classes have been really difficult for that, because you Zoom a little dragon class and all of a sudden they're not on the screen anymore, because it's just like watching TV. There's nobody, it's not a structure. So I have a problem with Zoom classes as far as that goes. And that's one of the things that they're learning. This is a class. It's not, I got to go back and tell my mommy time. It's, can I go get a drink? It's like no, we're in a class. You're taking class. But we have a lot of fun. I do crazy warm-ups, but there's still warm-ups that are progressing to the next level of jumping jacks. Do I do push-ups with my little dragons? Yes, but I don't tell them they're doing push-ups. They have no idea we're doing push-ups. We lay on the ground and I tell them to push away and we roar like a dragon. They think it's all fun and games, but they're doing a push-up. We do a little dragon jungle run where we do crazy animal motions, and hey, in the jungle, we got to climb the mountain, and we get down on the floor and we do mountain climbers. Do I tell them they're doing mountain climbers? No, it's just all fun and games. I do burpees with my little dragons. Do they know we're doing burpees? No, we talk about exploding like a volcano, and it's all fun. So, and then I'm doing the basic karate skills. They're learning that kick has 4 counts. Even though sometimes they forget that when they get a little older, and then you always have to remind your students, hey, kicks have 4 parts. Bring your foot up to the chamber, out and in and down. And then every little dragon class ends with an obstacle course that might have an on-the-ground balance beam. Their little crabs sit on the floor. They crab walk. Army guys sit on the floor. They have to army crawl by them. A tunnel to go through, something to jump over. It's my favorite thing. Love it. Love it. Love it.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for sharing. Like I said, I know Master Harvey's been doing Little Dragons for a long time successfully, longer than many of us were willing to adopt that age. But I think in today's world, we've all kind of realized that, that's the time to really get them hooked and get them interested and have fun, not just, always be super rigid about everything.
Well, and everybody's program doesn't have to be the same. I think that's one of the greatest things about World Tongue Sudo Association. They're not an overlord coming down on us saying, you have to teach the 3-year-old this and that and the other thing and the stuff and this is requirements. The Little Dragons should be fun and should be an introduction. And so much of the Little Dragons is also your personality. And my personality when I'm teaching Little Dragons is a little crazy, it's a little over the top, and it's okay, it's very over the top. But that's me, and that's how I engage that age group. And that's not gonna fit for everybody. I've had some people, watch my program and go, I can't do that. She's a crazy lady. And then I've had some people who have learned my program and very successfully redone it for themselves. Abby McFarlane has taken over a studio, and she's a great Little Dragon instructor. I used to teach the little dragon classes all the time here at River Valley and at Imperial. And at one point, it was like, there's too many of them. We need more classes. We need more structure. And I'm like, I can't be at my studio Imperial and here at River Valley. And Master Homeshek has really had to learn to adapt. And he throws in his own unique things to the little dragons. And we have a couple other instructors here. Mr. Hoyt. I never expected Mr. Hoyt to be so good with the little kids, but he really is. And it doesn't have to be exactly the same as I do, but you know, you have to engage with the kids in whatever way you engage.
Yes, ma'am. All right.
Love them.
I know, just checking in on comments too. There's a lot of people out there saying hi. So hello,
Hi.
Master Harvey. Check in again later. So more recently, I know you've become more interested in yoga to the point where you're actually now teaching yoga as well. And you've shared that a lot with maybe not a lot, but some of the basics with the Region 22 instructors class as well. So you can talk a little bit about how you got involved in that and how that relates to our martial arts training.
Wow. Everything seems to be a long story with me. Yoga
That's fine, man. Those are the best stories.
So a true diehard yoga instructor doesn't like to hear that yoga is just movement, because it's not. There's a whole other philosophy and a whole other side and a whole other realm of yoga. Okay, but what we Americans usually think about as yoga is the stretching and the moving and the holding of the posture. And sometimes people are a little caught up into thinking that every yoga class is throwing your feet behind your head, or you know, doing a headstand and making your body pretzel, and that's really not what it's all about either. So with that said, several years ago, two different people within the scope of the same week, I actually think it was within days of each other, approached us about using our facility to teach some yoga classes. One of them was a parent of a student, and one of them was an owner of a different business in town. And Master Homeshek, being Master Homeshek, if you all know, he likes his things on paper, and he likes his, you know, he likes paper. So he asked both of these people to send him like a proposal. What do you mean yoga? What do you want to do? How would that involve our studio? What would that do? And only one of them, Andrea Kirkham, actually did that. And she's got a good business sense also. So she started teaching some daytime yoga classes using our space when it wasn't being used. Some of the martial arts students took her classes and developed a rapport. And then she was offered to purchase a yoga studio a couple towns over. And then several of us kept taking some yoga classes. And then she got to the point where she was going to do a teacher training class. And I really sat down, I really had to look inside myself and look in the time factor as well as the financial commitment to getting this education. And we decided to go ahead and make it happen. Now, with the dance background, like I said, mimicking movement is not difficult for me, but there's so much more to yoga. In Tung Sudo, we have to learn some basic commands in Korean. And in yoga, there's a whole nother language of Sanskrit to learn some basic commands in. And there's a whole other, we have codes and tenets. They have yamas and niyamas, which are kind of rules for life and for good living. So there's a lot more to learn than just the postures. After I did that, I started integrating some of the yoga into warm-ups and karate classes, and then I started teaching yoga not only here at River Valley and my studio at Imperial. I started teaching for Andrea at her yoga studio, and it's become really important. It's a great way of helping your body stay healthy. We talked about the hard martial artist, and then there's the yin and the yang. It's the stira and the stuka in the yoga language. It's the same thing. You have to have the hard and the soft, the movable and the immovable work together. And so a lot of the philosophies are really similar. and you can find correlations with them all the time. Uh, and it's just become for me another piece of this whole journey.
Ma'am. Okay, excellent. Thank you. So going back a little bit, you'd also mentioned how your daughter kind of grew up in the dojang. I know you guys trained together as a family for many years through into black belt. Can you talk a little bit about maybe the importance of family in Tang Soo Do or the World Tang Soo Do Association?
Well, I mean, World Tang Soo Do Association, we are our own family. You know, whether you've got parents or kids or family that trains, you're in this family of World Tang Soo Do. You have a family that is your own studio, and you have a family that's your own region, and you have this family that's the whole world. So it really is you know, a nuclear family, and then your extended family all over. So yeah, when again, wow, well, why all my stories get to be long stories? Um, when I was a GUP student, people would call me by my first name, Julia. And like I said before, I was helping teach frequently because we were the only ones there. So I was Julia, and that other guy was Master Homeshek. And I came from work in my car and parked in the back of the studio, and he came from work in his car and parked in the front of the studio. And people didn't know we were married because that's the way we choose to interact at the studio at that time. I always called him, you know, Mr. Homeshek when he was a Samdan, and Master Homeshek, and I would yes sir, no sir, and bow to him. Not only because that's what you should do, but because I was high rank, and that's, you know, what's expected for people to follow. So people didn't know we were married. Very, very few people knew we were married. Uh, um, Angel Markunja and her sister, they eventually knew we were married. They were some of our very, very first students. But people didn't know we were married. And then all of a sudden I got pregnant and I started showing, and I started show. Oh, and even when I became a black belt, I chose to use my maiden name. I used Master Harvey because I really liked that anonymity of people can't walk in the studio and go, that's the master's wife, whatever. You know, yeah, she's running the counter because she's a master's wife. And don't tell me it doesn't happen, because it does. It's just the way it would be. And so I chose to not use his name in the martial art world. And yeah, I got pregnant, and you start showing, and people start looking out of the corner of their eyes, and people start realizing that the Master Homeshek's paying attention, and then, oh, scandal. You know, that's when people just go, hey, we're married. We've been married for a long time. And yeah, so she came to the studio by the time I was feeling better after childbirth, and I would teach with her. Master Homeshek would teach with her in the sacks on your, and she just was raised in the studio. Started the little dragons, entered into classes, and you know, we always talked about, we got to make sure we're not forcing this on her. She gets to do other things too. She gets to dance and, you know, be in the youth group. And we tried the piano and the guitar lessons for a while, but you know that, and she got up to black belt, and then she got to Edon actually, and then her life kind of started going in different directions. I have no doubt that she could come back in the studio and be spot on again, but she went into the dance world a little bit heavier, and went to college for dance, and that kind of became her thing for a while. Would love to have her back in the studio, and we only had one. I have no idea how people do it with 2, 3, 4 kids, and I have no idea how that works. But I also made the choice to be an active mother. I wasn't going to have somebody else raising my child. So, I mean, my parents helped take care of her, thank God, because it took all of us to raise her. But for the most part, she was with us. I didn't leave her at home with a sitter or with a nanny. She wasn't left, you know, with with her grandparents, you know, every single night when we were at the studio. She was here with us. So family is important, whether it's family that you're related to by blood or family that you're related to by this big group. So, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for sharing your story there as well. So In addition to some of the other things we've talked about, I want to move towards, association a little bit again. I mentioned early on that Master Harvey's been our training coordinator in Region 22. A lot of people don't realize the importance of that office necessarily until you start to really see how Master Harvey has to integrate everything together for us in our groups, either our instructors classes, our black belt camps, different events like that. So can you talk a little bit about what that function is and kind of how you approach our training as a region rather than as just individuals?
It's not as easy as it seems that it should be. Schedule people to teach stuff. What's the big deal? Until people start all having opinions, and opinions are good, and you need people to request, hey, I really need to work on this. I really need to work on that. I really need to work on the other thing. How about we do something of this and some of that? And then you have somebody say, oh, I don't like it doing the thing, or rah, 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 rah. And the people are like, but I wanted it. And, so sometimes you have to take everybody's opinions and go, okay. Fortunately, here in Region 22, we have 6-hour-long training classes. So in that 6 hours, I tell people there's probably going to be a couple hours you don't like. Hopefully there'll be a couple hours you really like. I consider my job to be, what do we all need as a region to grow? I have to kind of make sure that Somdons are getting the training they need to move on to Master's Camp. I have to make sure that the person who runs a studio 3 hours away and has no high rank and nobody to teach him his material, I need to make sure that person gets those things. And then I kind of have to make sure people get opportunities to teach. Because you and Master Homeshek are so good at, if I say, hey, go teach something, you two will just go, okay, and it'll be done, and it'll somehow be fabulous, and everybody will learn stuff. And I used to tell you, oh, holy master, walk on water. I don't know how you do that, but it is amazing. But other people need the opportunity to say, hey, next month, could you teach blah, 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 and they need to think about it, they need to schedule it. And some people are gonna teach and flop. And I think people still need the opportunity to do that, because if you never have the opportunity to do it, you're never going to know. So it would be very easy for me to schedule Master Jorgensen and Master Homeshek are teaching all day long, everything, it'll be wonderful. That would be easy, but that's not always necessarily what everyone needs, whether they know they need it or not.
Yes, ma'am. No, that absolutely, definitely answers the question. I said a lot of people sometimes don't think necessarily beyond their own classes how difficult it is to coordinate a large group together and still be cohesive. So,
yeah. And sometimes with your masters and sometimes rank doesn't matter when I'm pointing at my watch and saying, you're done, your time is over. Because some people would just go on and on and on and on and on. And sometimes I will be the one that takes the brunt of a high rank's anger. Well, I didn't get enough time. Sorry, I didn't mean for you to, but we had to go. And so sometimes I consider my job sort of to be running interference in things too. And scheduling lunch and making sure that everybody's fed, because people get really not happy when they're not fed. And
yes, ma'am. No, I just want to share that it's an important role in the region. We appreciate you, because I remember I did one time I had to help Master Marker with the black belt camp schedule, and I thought my brain was going to explode. So
yep.
Thank you for coordinating everything in our region.
And black belt camps are hard to schedule, because this person wants 3 hours, this person only wants to teach for 45 minutes, and this person wants to do this, but not at the same time that this person's doing that, because they want to do the thing. And yeah, that gets a little weird sometimes. And at the end, everybody can't have everything, and we just try to make a good event for the participants and go from there. So thanks. I appreciate that you appreciate that it's not always easy.
Just a question coming on Facebook goes back to a little bit of reference that we talked about earlier with Little Dragons, but Yoshioto is asking, what, if anything, do you take from your Little Dragon teaching group to teach the other age groups in martial arts?
Um, that age group is just so wonderful. They're learning so much, and I never intended to teach them any Korean, but it just started happening. Like my way of teaching them how to do crunches was say, everybody put your hands on your ima. And they would say ima. We would roll down and then we would pretend and climb the rope back up. And then all of a sudden the next week, they're all saying ima. I'm like, okay, let's move on to tuck. Everybody put your hands on your tuck, roll down, roll back. And over the weeks, I was realizing how much Korean they were learning. And it's just amazing. So I started, the more I say to them, the more they were throwing back at me. And you know, I was, you know, high block, cover your head. And every once in a while I started saying Sandan Maki. And all of a sudden they're saying Sandan Maki back to me. And I thought, wow, they're learning this Korean. And so I started trying to take that into, and the adult class is probably the worst for learning Korean. We adults have this, you know, language in our head, and it's so hard to learn anew. But I think I learned from the littlest kids that if I don't say it, well, of course they're not going to say it. And so I tried to take that to the adults. If I don't say it, of course they're not going to say it. And every once in a while, I'll harass the adults. I'll say, I'm going to have to bring some little dragons in here, teach you all Korean, because they know it better than you do. And it's just pretty amazing how much they learn, how quickly they suck up the language. And I don't know what it is with our adult brains, that there's some barrier in there now. But I guess, and I try to take some of my energy, enthusiasm into the adult class, but I actually got in a little trouble with that once because I had an adult look at me and say, quit patronizing me. And I was like, okay, I apologize. I didn't mean to. And I realized that I was still kind of like I was teaching little dragons. I was going crazy and talking to stuff. And I had to take a big breath myself and go, okay, I'm sorry. I said, I wasn't meaning to patronize you. That was me. That was, you know, I have to take a big breath myself. I'm sorry. And I had to remember that not everybody responds to the crazy little dragon teaching Master Harvey. I had to calm myself down. So I tried to learn that also. And there's lessons to learn. Oh my goodness, all the time, all the time.
Ma'am, thank you. Excuse me. So talking about physical movement and physical training a little bit. I've talked to Master Merrill about being a giant man and what that presented. You mentioned a little bit earlier that you kind of thought when you came in, I'm just this little dancer. What can I do? I mentioned this to Master Panavienko as well, as somebody of a smaller stature. Have you ever viewed, you know, your height, physical size in any way as a challenge to you in the martial arts, or if not, kind of how you might approach that differently than, you know, somebody like me?
Yes, it's a challenge sometimes, but it's a benefit sometimes too. And I think size, not only height wise, but as we get older, some of us are expanding, and that, you know, that is also a detriment. And that's more, you know, here we are in this COVID-19, and you know, some of us are going crazy. We haven't been able to teach. We're trying to do the Zoom thing, and that's a whole different issue. But yeah, I like to think that as Master Homechek and I came through this studio building and region building and studio function, that I had to teach him a couple things along the way too. And one of them was, he's 6'2", and I'm only 5'2" if I stand up really, really tall. And I had to say, I can't, no. Let's figure this out a little different. And it's usually the self-defense techniques and the one steps. And so I teach people of all different sizes. You would think that my adult class would be all, little women, because that's, we tend to attract who we are. But I actually have some really big guys in my class, and I've had to learn how to teach up here, as well as some of you tall guys have to learn to teach down here. Master Merrill said to me one time in class, he's like, well, you're going to have to, because that'll never work for you. And I showed him the way I was doing it, and he gave me the, okay, that might work. And I took that as like a triumph coming from Master Merrill up here. And sometimes you have to adjust your target. I am not very likely to hit you in the nose. I'm more likely to take the groin shot, which is maybe stereotypical female, but I'm more likely to fight you in and close and tight, where you're not going to reach me with all your big long limbs and things. And you have to do that with the techniques too. So it's a challenge sometimes. But it's a benefit sometimes too. Hand technique 29, man, that's my technique now. Once I understood that, drop, squat, groin shot, yes. And where you tall guys, you hate doing that on somebody my size. That's not what you would do on somebody my size. So I think accepting your height and your body build and learning how to work with that, not to say that we shouldn't all be working to improve ourselves too, but start with what you got and work with that and see where that's going to take you. And I don't like it when people say that technique won't work for me. Well, that technique my way won't work for you, but let's make that technique work your way and have it work for you. And I think that's what being an instructor is about. I don't have a room full of people my height and my body type, with all my physical problems. You don't have that. So you have to learn what works for different people and figure out how to adapt. So yes, being short is sometimes a problem. When I look up at you and Master Merrill and Master Homeshack, all looking down upon me, you kind of feel a little tiny, a little small, but then there are some sneaky techniques that you don't see coming on us. So
yes, ma'am. That's one of the reasons I want to talk about it with different masters is, again, we do learn how to approach things from different perspectives from each other, and we can learn from each other, but it really can be for anybody. One of the things I had to learn was I pretty much have to teach all my little dragons classes from my knees the whole class, or I'm way too intimidating.
Yes. And sometimes the male female aspect of the martial arts is there's a difference, and I don't think people should deny those differences. And as I have tried to teach teachers coming up, a lot of the men I have to look at and say, you are saying the exact words I'm saying, but you are saying these words like this. And I'm saying these words like this. Why do you think the kids respond to me different? And sometimes, you've got to get down on your knees and meet those little kids face to face, or you're going to have to learn to have a really good squat, and change your vocal tones. And I think women sometimes have the advantage in the vocal turn because we sound a little bit friendlier. We can say things with a female tone and it's not taken so, whereas a guy walks in and you don't mean to do it, but you're 6'2" up here and there's a voice like this, and it comes across different. And teaching young men, teaching boys, young adult men, that is sometimes tricky. And like I said, you are saying the exact words I say, but it's how you're saying them that are freaking that little kid out. So change it up a little bit.
I think it's also important for us to remember that a lot of times, a little 3 or 4-year-old boy is going to grow up to be a 6 foot tall man, or vice versa, not necessarily. So we have to always be prepared for, any type of student at any age group. So appreciate the different philosophies you have to have as an instructor. It's important. I have a question here relating back to yoga from Mr. Olson, who's also a little bit of a yoga guy.
He's a big yoga guy.
So,
He
Mr.
doesn't have
Olson,
any. Go ahead. Sorry.
Mr. Olson says, outside of Little Dragons training, what are some of the technical aspects of Tung Sudo that are reinforced by your training in yoga? Not a hard question at all.
Reinforced by yoga training. Wow. Thanks, Rashad. I really appreciate that. So those of you who don't know, Mr. Olson is an outstanding yoga practitioner. He does some poses and postures that really, really require the strength and the softness to do. You see some handstands and headstands, and you're like, oh, that little tiny person, stand on their head, whatever. But you know, it takes a lot of strength to do that. So I really admire Mr. Olson's physical practice of yoga because he has a beautiful practice to watch. With that said, how it helps your Tung Sudo or relates to your Tung Sudo, you know, when we're young, we go in and we start doing martial arts and we think that warm-ups is doing 100 jumping jacks and 50 push-ups and 50 crunches and 50 pulpaki punch. And yes, I'm warm now, I am sweating. And my philosophy is, okay, that's true, that's great, and go about your class. And then if you don't stretch and cool down at the end of that, your body is going to take all of that energy and go, so stretching is important. And although yoga is not just stretching, the breathing practices of yoga are similar, if not entirely the same, as our Qigong practices of breathing. And the benefits it does to your body is just astronomical. And like I said, as you know, when you're young, you know, I don't need to stretch, I'm all flexy. You will get old someday too. It'll catch up to you, and the whole concept of taking care of your body is really important. So I'm not quite sure I answered that question about yoga, going to martial arts. A lot of our softer, I shouldn't say styles, our softer moves are shipsu. There are yoga moves and yoga stances in there that you can find. And then as I'm practicing my yoga and doing something, I'm like, well, this is just front stance. This is nothing different. This is nothing special. And then you get some yoga cues about using this muscle and pulling in your belly. And you start taking that into your Tung Sudo and you find out how it all kind of wraps together and is very helpful.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
thanks,
No,
Mr. Olson.
I think you did answer the question. I know from working with Master Harvey, just some of the things she had just talked about with even just breathing and structure and looseness when it's appropriate and figuring out which muscles need to be loose and which muscles need to be tight. Just as a reference to the things that Master Harvey just said for me, definitely has an influence. So thank you. Got a few more different things coming out here. Just gonna sum up this one to simple question. Actually, no, I'm not, because Master Harvey mentioned how sometimes it's like, well, she's the master's wife, but I have a person out here that says, I've always loved learning flexible weapons from Master Harvey's husband at Black Belt camps, but
Yep.
Do you personally have a weapon that you love teaching or working with?
I hesitated to throw that into my previous story about yoga. I'm sure many people have heard that you reach a certain rank and you ought to specialize in something. And Master Homeshek is the flexible weapons, but he also is very, very good at other things. I was trying to find my thing. What's my thing? I want a thing. And for a long time as a woman, I fought the idea of your thing is kids. Because a lot of people are like, oh, woman, kids, it goes hand in hand. But after a while, I acknowledge the fact that I am really good with kids, really, really good with kids. So that's kind of a thing. And then I thought, well, I don't have anything to relate in instructor's class. What am I supposed to teach? How am I supposed to be looked at as as worthy, or what am I doing? And that's when I really delved into the yoga as my thing. And I translate my yoga into stretching for the martial artist, because most of the martial artists don't want and or need all the rest of the philosophies of it. And I try to teach my warm-ups with, hey, maybe the reason why your back hurts is because you're not working on your glutes. I know Master Robinson talked about that. Or maybe you're not working on your abs. And so that has become a bit of my thing. So as far as a weapon, love my staff. I love to focus on staff work as not just doing this pretty form, but what you're doing with this stick. And just because you're now holding a stick in your hand, what happened to your stances? So I guess I like my staff a lot, but I wouldn't say that I am near a staff expert of Master Jenna or Master Peterman or any of that such. So yoga has become my thing, my specialty. Does that answer that?
Yes, ma'am. Trying to think here if there's another Facebook question. Mostly comments right now, a lot of them. So I kind of have to filter through that. So again, Master Harvey, I encourage you to go back, even if you don't like watching yourself, at least check the comment section and respond to the many people that have been out there. We've consistently been between 15 and 20 people out there. So again, if you have questions for Master Harvey, throw them out there for Master Harvey. Yeah, we started Master Harvey said, no one's gonna watch me. That's how every master on the planet feels, by the way. So moving on to some general class questions I've kind of been asking all the masters. Can you remember any time during your martial arts career, maybe you were presented with a specific challenge? Could be any area, psychologically, mentally, physically, a student, whatever, that a specific challenge may have been presented to you that you had to overcome to continue your martial arts journey?
This COVID-19 is certainly a challenge. Life is challenges. There are a lot of challenges. Some of them a little bit more personal, internal that I really want to talk about.
That's absolutely fine.
But Masters Camp was a challenge. That was really hard for me. I had some struggles with that. You go there, you've prepared, you know your stuff, and everybody's told you how psychologically it's going to be, but then you get there and you just and I was at a phase where that was the first time I left my child, and it wasn't like she was a baby, but and we drive to get there, and I got there and somebody said just the wrong thing to me. They totally didn't mean anything by it. I know that. But what your brain knows and what your soul hears at that moment is, all wrong. And I've never been much of a crier, but and the people who were there know I cried that whole weekend for no reason. People kept asking me what's wrong, and it just made me cry more. And I think that if God gives you what you need when you need it, I think he was telling me I needed a big old humility check, because I became that weekend what I really thought I hated, and I couldn't control it. So that Master's Camp experience, no matter what people tell you or what people expect, it's going to be different for you. It's quite, and it's not like a boot camp where everybody's yelling at you things and the stuff and it's crazy. It's not like that, but it's a little overwhelming. And as I've been to the Master's Camp many, 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 many times now, it took me to the last time we were there to be sitting in that room, and I looked at Master Homechek and said, oh my goodness, these feelings aren't me. This is the whole room. So if you study any Qigong or you study any energy work, sometimes you have to ask yourself, why am I getting so agitated? Why am I getting so reserved? Why am I getting so nervous? And realize it's not you, it's the other 600 people in the room that are just having everybody's all this, and all that energy hits you like crazy. And it's an interesting. So Masters Camp, that's definitely a challenge. Some people, maybe it's nothing for them and their life is good. But for me, it was an eye opener. And every year going there, it is an eye opener. And if there are people out there who only know me from that weekend, you can press that. I'm a crazy person. But yeah, Masters Camp is a challenge for me every year. It's difficult to put yourself in that situation of so much emotion and so much heart too. Everybody down there has heart, has compassion, has feeling, has passion for this World Tongue Sudo Association and for each other. And sometimes that passion just spews over, and it's a little much to deal with. It's tricky. So yeah, Masters Camp is probably one of my biggest obstacles and hurdles to overcome. And I've lectured and I've presented several times now, and it doesn't make it any easier every single time. So.
Yes, ma'am. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing. Sometimes, it's important for people to realize that, masters are human beings too. And we all go through those same cycles, doubts, emotional ups and downs that the rest of you do. So that's important for people to hear those stories as well. So going beyond the martial arts a little bit, and even you've talked about your dance experience and your yoga experience, and sometimes this answer is just not really or no, but I ask everybody anyways, like, do you have any other interests, hobbies, activities outside of maybe the physical realm and the martial arts realm that maybe somebody doesn't know about you that you might like to share with the group?
Martial arts takes up an awful lot of time. I'm a studio owner of a it's really only 2 days a week studio, but I'm a huge part of, I'd like to think I'm still a huge part of River Valley and the region. So that takes up a lot of time. And the yoga world, I love my yoga, and I can't wait to get back in the studio and actually do things with a group of people. Being personally motivated is difficult for me. I'm not one of those people that can work out by myself and do the stuff. And yeah, it does some work. But yeah, we have a chunk of property in the country that I am thankful to live out and away, because sometimes it's good to not have neighbors. We grow a lot of our own food. I do a lot of gardening. I'm not quite sure I want to say that I like that. Or is that just another job like mowing the grass? But I'm thankful for the ability to do that. My parents are still alive and they live right beside us, and I'm really thankful for that now. We have some good times, but I'd like to spend more time outdoors. Growing up as a kid, I used to kayak and canoe and hike all the time, and there doesn't seem to be time left for that anymore. But like I said, fortunately, we live in the country, and I've got a huge backyard that opens up into wilderness that I can be in anytime I want. And that space is important. I don't think that I would be a person that I am if I had to live in the city, and in all of that energy of people would probably make me more crazy than I am. So I do a little bit of sewing too, as far as hobbies. I do a little bit of sewing. Again, a lot of that's out of necessity, maybe not so much fun anymore. I do a little crafty thing sometimes. Sometimes you have to make something tangible and physical to say, I did that. Look at this that I've accomplished. You have a physical, tangible thing to show for your time. That's always kind of fun. I've been binge baking in this COVID-19 situation, which also means I've been binge eating, but I've been binge baking. So those kind of things kind of, cancel each other out too. So, but Yeah.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
That's
Just
me.
going
Very
earlier.
much
I
so.
can't necessarily have a personal relationship to everything she's talked about, but I did spend a fair amount of time outside this weekend. And just right now in the whole COVID situation, just having that opportunity to just walk outside and have some space is important, I think.
Yeah. I cannot imagine people who live in the city. I cannot imagine what you're going through. I cannot imagine not being out, tell your kids, yes, go outside, but don't play with the other kids that are, right there. I can't imagine what what your life is, and hang tough. So,
Yes, ma'am. So Abby McFarland's out there. She's asking,
hi, Abs.
do you have a favorite event that you look forward to every year? And if so, why is it your favorite?
Wow. Miss McFarland with a tough question. Seems simple, but that's a tough question. You know what? I think I've cycled through the things that I look forward to the most. I used to look forward to the adult black belt camp. And then I had a child and I started going to the youth black belt camps when we were still Region 8. Um, and I kind of wanted to look forward to going back to an adult black belt camp to be a participant. But now that you're the training coordinator, that's kind of, some of that's all in the past. um, I look forward to the tournament, not because of all of the work it piles on us all, because man, oh man, that's a lot of work. But I love working the souvenir stand. I love at the end of the day being able to say, I was a part of raising this much money for the scholarship fund. um, I, I look forward to the end of that day. I look forward to the satisfaction of the end of that day. And you look forward to your students coming up with you and saying, look at the medal I got. And so as an instructor, you look forward to seeing that. You don't look forward to the kid who totally forgot his form and he's crushed and he's crying. But that should be a learning experience too. So I look forward to the end of that day, kind of going through my checklist of what happened, and going through, okay, what do I need to do this week to wrap that all up in all the little pockets, in my pocket of being an instructor, what students will have to help fix and boost along a little bit, and take the, and what student do I get to go, yay, you were the grand championship, now don't let it go to your head. um, and I look forward to counting the money and counting my merchandise at the end of the day, because I'm the merchandise coordinator for the tournament. And I look forward to the satisfaction of, hey, we did great, or oh, we didn't do so good, but I got all this stuff to sell next year. I look forward to the feeling of accomplishment when it's all over. And I look forward to dinner. Um, the instructors and studio owners go to dinner afterwards. And if you are one of the people who are like, oh, I'm not going to dinner, I'm getting in my car and driving home, I'd really encourage you to hang out and have there's a big old decompressing, because for that week or for days before that, we're all like, oh, I got to do this and that. And I know Mrs. Jorgensen, Master Jorgensen, is pulls her hair out, not just that week, but tons before that. And it's just good to sit afterwards and take that collective breath of, oh, we did it. Maybe we screwed up this and that and the other, and we have to get better at blah, 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 blah. But boy, there's a great feeling. That's a feeling of family at the end of those days. So we had to cancel our tournament this year. I don't think I realized until it was canceled how big of a part of us that is. So I'm going to miss that tournament, even though I'm not a tournament. I don't consider myself a tournament teacher. I don't teach tournament sparring except for the couple months before the tournament. But the group, the community of that, having a grandmaster come in and visit, and they usually teach a class, and even if I don't get to take the class, they're there, and I miss that.
Yes, ma'am. So question that relates a little bit to that topic of the tournament as well and the group cohesion. Ben Haas has a question. Creativity demos used to be a big outlet for your creativity, and River Valley Tungsten was known for pushing boundaries with their creativity. So do you still oversee creativity, and do you have a favorite demo from the past?
Well, Mr. Hawes knows that yes, that was a big phase of my training. The creativity, it kind of brought my dance world back. The usually using music and the togetherness and the team and the musicality of that. And yes, we pushed a few boundaries, and there's a few rules that are my fault, my honor to have made. I don't know. Okay, so when I took over Imperial Dragon Tangsudo from Mr. Casuccio, some things became a little bit of a conflict. I cannot take care of my studio Imperial and still be too very attached to River Valley, even though I know most of the people and I will cheer everybody on at the tournament and be there to handhold or hug whatever needs to be done. When it came to the realm of creativity, one studio, one team. I couldn't be involved in both. So I had to give up the bigger creativity of River Valley Tangsudo and move on to Imperial. We have smaller teams. I have more kids of age groups. We're not doing the technical, flashy creativity, but I realized how important that was to all of them. They're being a part of a team. This thing that usually is individual. I individually go into the ring and do my forms. I individually go into my ring and have to spar someone. But creativity as a team, we collectively as a team are here to present to you this that we have worked on, and that's important. So my creativity lifespan has changed, as everything does, but I still love it. I still think it's important, and I have some really fond memories. And of course, yes, the Mulan demo is still one of my favorite. It was all women, and it was one of those things where Miss Angel Marcunja and I looked at each other and said, "Well, we got to do something." Originate was really big. River Valley was still kind of new, and we said we've got to just, even if just you and I go do something. So she and I choreographed this little ditty, and it came together so quickly and so beautifully that we were like, hey, we've only used a minute. Let's get these 4 other girls and throw in this other little ditty. And it came together so easily. And that's when you've got something great when it comes together. So yeah, and yeah, we're a little bit known for that one. We did the full. I had long hair at that time, and we actually did the ponytail dagger, cut it off thing in the days where you were allowed to use real daggers. So times have changed, but yeah, I still have a lot of fond memories of that, and a lot of fond memories of you, Mr. Hawes, and your rope, and dropping it on me right before the Somdon promotion. I have not forgotten that. So.
Yes, ma'am. So we're getting to about that hour mark. I have a couple more questions for Master Harvey. If you have anything, please, again, I'll encourage her to go check afterwards to, possibly text comment you if we don't get to your questions. But a couple more questions for Master Harvey. You just spoke about how times have changed, and this is something, again, I've been asking all the masters to think on is, are there any specific ways that you want to talk about how either just martial arts in general or the association has changed in your time as a martial artist, either, for the better, and there are a lot of those, or maybe something that we've lost that was, quote unquote, better in the past, either or both?
Times change, things move on. And sometimes what you can do with 100 people is not what you can do with 600 people. And sometimes what you can do with 600 people is not what you can do with 2,000 people. And so things have to change. Our tournaments have had to change. Rules have had to change just because of the sheer number of people. And time marches on, and I don't want to be the master, and I don't think I have any right to be the master that says, back in my day, we used to do, back in my time, it was blah, 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 because, back in my time, things happened the way they needed to happen in that time. And now things are happening the way they need to happen in this time. I talked a little bit about, even though I was just a GUP student, I was important in teaching. And sometimes in privately, I would grab Master Homcheck, and I hope he doesn't kill me for saying this, and I'd have to say, you know, I really don't think you could hit that kid with that shinai. I don't really think that's a good idea. And his response was, when I was his age, Grandmaster Shin hit me with the shinai. And I'm like, I don't think you can do that anymore. We're going to get sued. So, you know, things have to change for a reason. I think that sometimes we take things for granted too. And I don't want our kids to take things for granted. Everything is not a gimme. Just because your mom paid your tuition and you showed up, for me, that doesn't mean you're getting your next rank. Did you learn your stuff? Did you do your work? Are you paying attention to me? Are you learning your one steps, or are you, you know, doing whatever you're doing over there? You know, so things have to change, and yet some things should stay the same. So, is that a politically correct good answer?
Yes, ma'am. I actually like that philosophy that you know, we do what's appropriate for the time that we're in. It's not something that people always think about. They always think about the time maybe that they were in, and not necessarily the time we're in now.
Well,
definitely
I also,
challenges right now. Sorry.
That's part of the definition of protocol. Doing what's right at the time. And some people get really stuck on protocol, and we must march like this, and we must walk like this, and we will bow to this, and we will bow to that, and we will bow to that. And I'm like, wait, that's not working right now. We'll have time for that stuff. You know, what is right for the time? You know, if I know that 100 masters are showing up at my studio during my class time, is it fair to me to stop those paying customers 100 times to turn around and bow to 100 masters? Some people would say yes. My answer is no. I'm going to stop once and bow to everybody and go on with that. So yeah, protocol is what is right at the time. And sometimes you don't make the right decision, and you have to say, I'm sorry, I blew that. I apologize, and hopefully just move on.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Another question that I've only recently started asking the last couple people, whether I've asked it or not, I've kind of addressed. To you as a master in the World Taekwondo Association, what does that word master mean to you? What's your perspective on that?
Wow. That's something also that I think has changed. You know, because back when I was a GUP student, you could count the masters in your region, in your area, on one hand. And now you need two hands and your toes and somebody else's hands and toes, because there seem to be a lot more masters rolling around. So, you know, it can mean different things now. It used to mean that you owned your own studio and operated your own studio, and you knew what it meant to be financially invested in the studio. It doesn't necessarily mean that anymore. And again, that's not a bad thing, but it's a different thing. I remember getting my master's belt, and you know, Grandmaster Shin puts it on you, and that's always a special moment. But I remember taking it off that night and holding that belt in my hand and saying, wow, is this heavy? And I thought, this is really heavy. Physically, this is a bigger, heavier, substantial belt. And theoretically, this is a bigger, heavier, more substantial job and responsibility. So I always thought that I should write a creative essay called How Heavy is the Belt? Because if you don't think that that's heavy, maybe you should pause for a moment and think about that, because it means a lot.
Yes, ma'am. I would read that, so I would encourage you, as somebody who does like to write those things periodically, to do that. So I would appreciate your insights on that in that written form as well. So one more specific question for Master Harvey, and then we'll go to our final kind of open-ended comments. So last specific question is, again, something that's sometimes emotional and difficult for us that spent time with them, but I've kind of been talking about how in today's era, there are many association students now that never met or even really know who Grandmaster Shin is or was, and going forward, people aren't going to know kind of who Grandmaster Baldwin was. So I think it's important for us to share experiences there as well. So is there anything you can share about either or both of the Grandmasters, or even coming into current times, any of the Grandmasters or Masters that influence you now?
Listing all the masters that have influenced me is that's a long road. Master White and Master K definitely. But sometimes somebody influences you, and nowadays you don't even know their name. It's like, wait, which tall, bald-headed master was that? So yeah, that's hard. But I had the fortunate ability to spend a little bit of time with Grandmaster Shin, not necessarily the amount of time that other people did, but he was in my house once, and just to see him sitting on my couch and making everybody feel at ease was amazing. But I got to train with him on several occasions, doing several things, and one of which, funny story, was at one of the first Qigong retreats. It was South Carolina, North Carolina. It was one of those cold it was a Carolina on a beach, but it was really cold. Room full of 100 people, and we're all doing our Qigong thing, and everything's going great, and we're supposed to be having our hands circle, and Grandmaster Shin's standing on a table way up there, and he said, okay, everybody circle hands clockwise, make hands go clockwise, and I'm making my hands go clockwise, and I'm really kind of getting into myself, and I'm looking, and all, 100 people in the room, he's standing on a table when he hollers, Juya, because that's how he said my name, Juya, go clockwise. I'm like, I think I'm going clockwise. And I'm looking around the room because he's standing on the table going clockwise, and the rest of the room is mirror imaging him. And I'm like, you people aren't going clockwise. What you doing? And he goes, Juya, hold clock on belly. Go like clock. And I went, okay, this is the new clockwise, but I'm going that way. And it was just, in the middle of, Juya, okay. But a more sentimental thing that he said to me was, like I mentioned, I'm usually not a crier. Maybe now that I'm getting older, I'm a little bit more of a crier than I used to be. But I was going through the rank line getting my belt. It was probably my Chodon, and I'm like crying and bawling, and I get up to Grandmaster Shin, and he gives me this big, huge hug, and he says, don't worry, you cry when it's important. And it was like he was giving me permission to cry, and I'll never forget that. Juya, you cry when it's important. So it's okay to cry when it's important, whether it's good or whether it's bad. It's okay.
Yeah. Thank you. So just as our kind of final question, isn't really necessarily a question per se, but I've asked all the masters any final comments that they would like to share, either something about your personal journey, about association or martial arts in general, or advice you have for other students who are coming up through, any kind of final, quote unquote, words of wisdom for the group today.
Words of wisdom. Wow. I always tell you, Master Homeshek, I do not have any magic, because I always thought that once you got that master's belt, somehow you were endowed with some sort of magic, and you became wondrous, and people would look at you and go, oh, and I know I tease you guys about that all the time, how you can walk into a room and teach and somehow pull that out of thin air, something wonderful, and I never quite picked up that magic. So I don't know if I have any true words of wisdom other than find your way. And your way is not that master's way, and it's not the other guy's way, and it's not the, Master Robinson was talking about, training 24 hours a day and rah, 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 and it was training, and then how now he knows what that did to his body. So, when you're young, I think you should go crazy and do the jump spinny, whatever, so long as you're not hurting yourself. But as you get a little older, that's not the way anymore. The landings get a little hard, and the takeoff is a little bit more. There's more to take off, and find your way. And if you think that everybody around you is better than you, just because they can do something physically better, that's not better, that's just different. That's their way. So even if you're 60 years old and starting to get hunched over and it's not your way to do the jump spinning anymore, and you're having a hard time kicking knee high, let alone head high, I think that's fine. And I've had to come to realize that after a couple of, you know, older age setting in and injury setting in, that I'm not doing those flying, spinning things anymore. And that's okay. And it's okay that I teach that and I don't really have the ability to do it anymore either. You know, I hate that old saying, those who can't do, teach. Well, that's not true, because I had some of the best physical students for a long time. They could run circles around me and fly circles around me. But when they wanted to know how to do something, I could still tell them how. I could tell them what part of their body to engage. So I guess don't feel bad as time is marching on and you're marching on, and it's not the same. And if your way is not somebody else's way, that's okay. Find your way. Find your way.
Yes, ma'am. All right, I want to thank Master Harvey for her time today and being with us. Thank you guys out there who are watching and provided some questions for Master Harvey to answer as well. I will be continuing to schedule other masters interviews. I don't have anybody right up right now, but stay tuned for that. And I believe Master McCarty will be interviewed later tonight around 8 p.m. for those of you who want to tune in for that. So again, thank you, Master Harvey, for your time. We appreciate it. We're going to finish and close out. So
Thank you for doing this, Master Jorgensen. This is, and I thought that I was going to be and you made this much easier to just talk. So we appreciate you, and we're going to get an interview from you soon, right?
Eventually we may get that. Looking for anyone who wants to volunteer to do that, I guess. So, we'll get that done at some point, but I'll be continuing to do the interviews as well. I kind of felt an obligation in some ways to get that out to people. So, all right.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am.